So you don't have to play small in order for other people to pretend that they're bigger. When I was a kid, I had a pretty abusive stepfather. He was an alcoholic. He also had chronic pain. He, very negative guy, and nothing I did was quite right. And so I bottled a lot of stuff up when I was in my preteens, and even in through my teens. I bottled stuff up and I didn't stand up for myself. No, nowhere near the way I should have. And that started a lifelong addiction of playing small. I'd play little with authority figures. I had a massive problem with authority figures. If I got questioned on something, I'd just clam up. Because you automatically, when you're in that type of an abusive upbringing, you automatically assume you're wrong. Because that's all you know. You know, as a little kid, I think I was 5 years old when my mother met my stepfather, and moved us, off almost 1,000 miles away from my family, my friends. Everything that I knew was just suddenly gone, just taken away. So it started this lifelong addiction of poor me, playing the victim. Why don't people understand me? And then it started this kind of megalomania in my early 20s, where I thought I was right and everybody else was wrong. Well, you can't get any learning done that way either. And it all started from just not speaking up. We get into relationships with people to enforce the bad habits that we've taken on. And it can be a very heavy burden that you don't even know you're carrying because it's all subconscious. So I started getting out of that in my 20s. I met my mentor, who was a brilliant guy, jazz saxophone player. He was also a Zen Buddhist, an avid fly fisherman, artist, contemporary jack of all trades. And when he hipped me into Buddhism, into Zen Buddhism specifically, that changed a lot for me because I started practicing mindfulness. Really wasn't good at meditation in the beginning. And it's because I was trying too hard to silence the mind and I wasn't allowing the thoughts just to be there and accepting them. And it took me a few years to get that idea of self-contemplation without actually contemplating. And I started getting out of the megalomania, but not the victimhood, not the woe is me. Then it was a very sudden change. I realized I was the problem. Not in a woe is me way, not in a victim mentality way that would just keep me spiraling, but in a way that helped me understand that every person in my life, I allowed them to talk to me and act in a way towards me that was hurtful, and I allowed it. I went out of my way to accept that type of behavior from people because that's what I thought. That was my belief pattern, that that's just the way people are. They're just mean. No, they're not just mean. They're mean until you tell them they're mean. they're a bully until you bully back. And unfortunately, that is a hard, heavy lesson to learn. But I've realized that I've even done that into my 40s. That I allow people to be the way they are without contradicting them at all. Now, that doesn't mean that you should go out of your way to be mean or lose your temper. But what it does mean is that you can call people out. Go, no, that's not the way it is. You can believe whatever you want to believe. I mean, opinions are opinions, and we all have them. But there are certain truths in the world. There are certain truths to how things work. There are laws. Laws of attraction, laws of cause and effect, laws of gender, laws of manifestation. They're never cut and dry either. Because we can only understand things on the level or the depth that we've went to previously. So I guess it would be like a sport, or like doing an Ironman marathon. You don't know you can do it until you progress through the steps to get better and better until you can do it. Meditation's the same way. It's a practice. You go deeper and deeper every time, but it's such a minuscule amount that you don't notice it until you do. So you don't have to act small so others can pretend that they're big. You don't have to tolerate it. You don't have to put up with it. You voice your opinion. You tell your side. Right, wrong, or indifferent. You tell your side. You can meditate on it for a while to make sure you've got your ideas and your perceptions in the right place. But I remember I was 20. I'll back up a little bit. When I was 15, I ran away from home. I was tired of the drunken abuse, the insanity of my household, and I ran away. I took off. And I didn't come back until I was like 19, and I only came back for like 6 months. And it was because my mother's health was failing, and I was trying to help out. But my stepfather was still an abusive alcoholic, and I said, I'm sorry, Mom, I love you, but, I can't do this. It was selfish, absolutely. But I meant to do it. I meant to walk away from that. And my mom died a couple years later. And I felt terrible about it, and I carried that guilt for a long time. But it's only now that I realized it was absolutely necessary. I would have gotten stuck in that. My mom was schizophrenic, and she was also diabetic, and she was also bipolar, and she had a lot of issues, especially towards the last 4 or 5 years of her life. It was terrible. And I felt terrible for leaving her, but there's a point, man, as a young person, you have to get out on your own and go do the thing that you need to do. So I think I was 21. My mom died when I was 20, and I was 21 when I came back to my parents' place to visit my younger sister, and I told off my stepfather. And of course, he gaslit me. Well, I'm sorry you feel that way. I go, well, it's not a feel that way. I lived that way. I lived that. You could have been a little more supportive, man. Childhood doesn't need to be the road of hard knocks. We should let our children be children as long as they can be children. Let them use their imagination, let them go play, let them discover themselves and discover the things that they want to do. I got so caught up in my trauma as a child that I forgot about me. And even being selfish and walking away from it still wasn't about me. It wasn't getting at the heart and the root of my issue. So I turned 50 yesterday. And I had this unreal epiphany. There's a certain person in my life that turns their bad behavior around on me. And I've allowed it, of course. But I've never really spoken up about it to them. And not many other people either. I think there's one other person that knows about the situation. But this person is a compulsive liar. And because they lie so much, and I didn't realize it until literally yesterday, because they lie so much, they assume that I'm doing the same thing. They assume that everybody else is doing the same thing too. So I don't need to be mean to this person. I can simply, when accused of something, just simply voice my opinion. And it's not even an opinion. If I'm being forthright, I'm being authentic and vulnerable in every moment of my life, I can say that's just not true. I'm sorry that you think it is, but it's not. It's not true. And then I realized I'd been doing it in other areas. I have a doctor that I went to for some back issues. I have childhood kyphosis, which has gotten worse and worse over the years. And I was in construction for a long time, and I beat my body up, and so now most of the vertebrae in my back are herniated. Most of. It's not one or two. It's pretty much all of them. And I have another MRI coming up for my neck here in a week or two to see what's going on there. So I'm in pretty consistent pain. And I got hurt at work a while back. And I was no longer able to do the job that I had done for most of my life. I just physically wasn't able to anymore. And I'm an outdoors guy. That's why I did construction, because I enjoyed being outdoors in the sun and the camaraderie and all the stuff that goes along with that. And I went to a doctor. I finally got health insurance after my injury, and I'd hurt my back pretty bad, and I mean, to the point I heard the pop, and I went, uh-oh, and I couldn't walk for like 6 weeks. So there was and then I've had drop foot a couple times. I don't really want to go into the specifics of everything, but the doctor immediately thought I was on drugs and kept pressuring me, asking, what drugs are you taking? What drugs were you on? What have you taken? And I was like, shit, when I was in my 20s, I smoked pot for about 5 years, and then I gave it up. I quit. He goes, yeah, but what other drugs? I was like, I haven't really done any other drugs. And I think I did cocaine one time and went, ew. And I was like 19 in a death metal band. And never did it again. And he said, no, you have to be on something. I said, why do I have to be on something? He goes, well, everybody is. He goes, do you drink? I was like, no, I don't drink. And he just couldn't believe it. And then my test results came back. So the next time I went in to see him, like a week or two later, he was all apologetic. He said, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. I was like, oh, thank you. Then he got the x-rays back for my back, apologized again. And as much as I wanted to hold it against him, I just couldn't. I get it. Society is funny. A lot of us are on drugs because it's painful. And drugs give you this placebo effect that everything's okay. I liken it to smoking pot. When you first do it, you get these crazy epiphanies. Most of them are ridiculous. But you get these crazy epiphanies, and then you sober up, and then you go through them and say, all right, some of those were ridiculous, but there were some of them that really made me think outside the box. And so you pay more attention to those. And then the next time you do it, you have another situation where all of these things, maybe subconsciously, come up. And it's great. Plant medicine is fantastic. Mushrooms, peyote, LSD, kinda, ayahuasca, whatever, San Pedro. Those things are fantastic for bringing things up. The problem comes in when you start falling on them as a pattern of relief. This is the only way I can feel good about myself today, is by being high from the time I wake up until the time I go to bed. It's a twisty road. And eventually, all of those things that you're repressing get worse. And then they become more substantial, more intensive. And then the next thing you know, you're using it as a drug. It's no longer a medicine. So those are the warning signs. It's a slippery slope. Myself, I've been sober for 25 years, or no, 24 years now. I don't do any drugs at all anymore. I microdosed with mushrooms, but I don't consider mushrooms a drug because I wasn't really getting anything out of it. I was hoping it was going to heal my body a little bit, but it did a little bit. It gave me a little motivation. But then I stopped because I just don't care for the abruptness to which mushrooms bring up trauma. I'd much rather deal with it in meditation and in a more natural, well, not natural, a more personal way. But yeah, I was never a drinker. I never got into heavier drugs. I think marijuana was about as deeply as I went, besides the one time with cocaine. That was a ridiculous thing. But the issue is that for a long time, I allowed people just to do whatever they were going to do to me. No revenge. Wouldn't even call them out. And I'm not saying revenge is the way to go, but calling them out is. I don't like the way you treat me. I just did it to a friend that I had in high school. We were best friends, and we reconnected here a couple years ago. And he got pretty heavy into religion, which is fine, but it's very it's very evangelical. It's very fire and brimstone, and I don't really care for that. Mostly because it's just not true. It's not real. It's another placebo on top of all the other placebos that we feed our ego to make ourselves feel bigger and better than we actually are. And he made a statement, and I was like, "Are you sure about that?" And he doubled down, you know. I said, "All right, man, fuck you, I'm done." And he said, "Well, what?" I'm like, "No, I'm done," and I hung up on him. I'm just not going to tolerate it, and you don't have to tolerate it either. People being just absolutely disrespectful for the sake of being disrespectful, it's cool, man. Have your opinions, have your faith, do whatever it is that gets you going, but don't take it out on other people. You know? That fire and brimstone bullshit, it's too much. But how does this relate to awakening? It relates to awakening because once you understand that you're in an illusion, you can easier, it's easier to see the nonsense that's out there, the generations and generations of trauma that people have endured and handed off to their kids. You know, people aren't cheaters. Parents were cheaters. People aren't drug addicts. Parents were drug addicts. They were addicted to something. We hand those things down. And somebody in the lineage has to make a stand. They have to say, this is enough. This is over. It's ending with me. So be that person. Be the end. Be the end of a disaster. None of this is fucking real. None of it. I mean, we can touch the leaves and sit on a fucking rock. We can make love. We can do drugs. We can enjoy television shows and movies. We can watch the news. But at the end of the day, all you have is yourself. So be the thing that you want to live within. Change those things in your life that are unsettling, that are no longer beneficial. Move away from old beliefs and old patterns that just don't work anymore. Be kind, but do no harm to yourself. Right? It's nice to be nice, but you don't have to do it at your own expense. You don't have to pretend that by being super kind, you are more spiritual, because you're not. You can fight back with compassion. As always,